My name is Kenneth Brummel, and I am the Associate Curator of Modern Art at the Art Gallery of Ontario. When conservators in 1992 captured an X-radiograph of La Misereuse accroupie, they uncovered a landscape underneath this painting. For us, what is particularly intriguing about the initial stages of the painting of this picture is how Picasso fit the contours of the crouching woman's back into the diagonal undulating line that signified the tree line or the ridge of the mountains in the background.
I'm Sandra Webster Cook, Conservator Emerita at the Art Gallery of Ontario. One of the things that a conservator notices immediately in looking at a painting like La Misereuse accroupie is the varied surface texture. In the background, there are drip lines, there are muddied areas that appear to be smudged, there are unusual crack patterns where the underlying color is quite unrelated. But we became actually quite focused on two particular areas. Underneath her left shoulder, there are horizontal bands, which we later find relate to a temple. But the forms that are peeking through her right shoulder were not really very well explained. And we're able to detail those much more with the infrared reflectance spectroscopy done by John Delaney.
So in the Crouching Woman, one of the interests was to see what changes were made in the composition. This is starting off working close to the visible in our data set in the infrared that we collected the painting, all registered together and mosaicked. And you can see it resembles the painting quite nicely. If I change the selection of wavelengths that we use to make the false color image, and a false color image is not a true color image, it's not what you see with your eye, it's just that we pick three different images from this data cube and then put them in the red, green, and blue guns just to make it easier to see the separation, to see the features that people are interested in.
We were able to begin to decipher the arm that was initially painted on the right-hand side of this figure. I then reviewed the Catalogue raisonné of drawings by Picasso. Luckily, I was able to identify a watercolor made around 1902 of a seated woman who was holding with her right hand a disc. The watercolor helped us interpret the arm that Picasso had initially painted in La Misereuse accroupie, but then had subsequently rejected.
Here I think you can see this hand extending upwards, which is not apparent in the visible image. You can see these dark outlines of the hand. There's actually fingers here, and this is the disc that Kenneth identified as a piece of bread from that time period. And it's the visualization of these kind of images that are most useful.
We wanted to know more information about the chemical composition of some of those paint layers. So we made application to a program funded by the Mellon Foundation at Northwestern University, Art Institute of Chicago. It's the Center for Scientific Studies in Artist Materials. And we were fortunate then to bring a scientist to the Art Gallery of Ontario to carry out X-ray fluorescence. It's a technique that exposes 1 square millimeter by 1 square millimeter of the paint surface to an X-ray, radiation that excites the molecule, and when it returns to a normal state, it releases fluorescence, and that fluorescence is characteristic and helps us identify the elements and infers the particular pigments. When we took the small sample from the upper edge, we could see a brighter color peeking through, it looked quite pink. And when we took the cross-section and mounted it, we were able to see both cadmium and mercury, indicating vermilion, were in the underlayers of the sky of the underlying landscape.
The landscape depicting the Parc de Labyrinth de Horta was one Picasso might have parked at his parents' home in May 1901 when he traveled to Paris from Barcelona. We will never know where the canvas originated and how Picasso obtained it, but what we can say with confidence is that that representation of the Parc de Labyrinth de Horta was made by a modernista artist working in the style of Santiago Rossignol at the turn of the century.